Hello there, you're very welcome to this Grow Remote and AsIAm event. We're going to be speaking to Debbie from AsIAm, and I'd just like to introduce Debbie, and she'll take it away. She'll talk us through lots of the different topics, lots of opportunity for conversation and for discussion today. So thank you so much for joining us. So Debbie joined the AsIAm team in October 21 and is working as head of adult support and employment. So her responsibilities include the employment advice service, and she'll talk a little bit about that today. But it basically supports autistic adults who are seeking employment and potential employers and helping them to engage with autistic talent. So Debbie actually has a degree in applied physics and a master's degree in education, leadership and management, and is currently working on her doctorate on autistic education and employment. So we'll bring all this wisdom, all this experience into this presentation today. Debbie has worked with autistic children and adults throughout her career with the Centre for Talented Youth Ireland, Specialist Turn Ireland, and more recently Ireland's National Technical Apprenticeship Programme. And always good to learn a little bit about her. So Debbie is also passionate about animal rescue and has rescued and adopted dog, cats, and wait for it, orangutans. So yeah, I think a bit curious to learn a little bit more about that, Debbie. But we'll hand over to you, and you can share your screen there. So thank you so
That's
much for
great.
joining us.
Thank you, Donal. I'll just share it there. Make sure you have it. There we go. Oh, there we go. And should be coming up there. So I just want to make sure you can see that nice and
That's
clear,
great.
Donal.
Thank you, Debbie.
Fantastic. Thank you for the intro. It sounded like somebody else because I can't remember any of that education, being honest. It's a very long time ago. But I suppose I've been lucky. I was attracted before, I suppose, I go on to the likes of physics. I would have been quite an introverted individual, and I didn't want to work with people, and I wanted to stay in a lab. And it was, I woke up one day, I suppose, and I decided, I did some work with the Centre for Talented Youth as a student, and I decided actually I enjoyed teaching. And through that, I met many autistic children who were gifted, and autism is in my family, from my sister, my brother, my nephew. And I was quite well aware of autism only within my family, not outside it, until the Centre for Talented Youth, which I ended up working there for some years. And after that, I decided through one of the board members that we would set up Specialist Turn Ireland. And I worked there for a number of years before working, as you mentioned, the National Tech Apprenticeship. But throughout my career, I have worked with autistic adults. And in 2020, I looked back at research I'd done 10 years ago, and the statistics for unemployment and underemployment, which we'll talk about later on, are huge. And the stats I did over 10 years ago have remained unchanged. So I decided I was going to do a doctorate around this and how we could change these critical unemployment rates and underemployment. And last summer, I was looking at AsIAM's website because we'll put papers up there. And I saw the title of my thesis and I clicked on it, and it was actually a job advertisement. And that's how the head of adult support and employment came about, and the department started in October last year. So it feels like a full circle opportunity for me as well, because it's an area I love to work in. And today we'll talk about what autism is. And we all have perceptions, especially from media, what's put out there. And it's to give you more information about what autism is and employment around that. So it's not working. I'll just have to use my keypad, apologies. So the best term we found is autism is a complex, invisible condition which a person is born with. Autism is a developmental condition. It means that the way a person communicates, interacts, and understands other people and the world around them is very different to those who do not have the condition. Now, again, this is person dependent as well. It can be described as a spectrum, which means it impacts different people in different ways, to differing degrees at different times and in different situations. So at AsIAM, we always say, if you've met one autistic person, you have just met one autistic person. You cannot generalize across the community either, okay? And you can ask questions. This is a conversation as well. So post questions in the chat, and Donal, interrupt me at any time because I know you're keeping an eye on, and I can answer those. And the four main areas for autism can be around communication, social interaction, social imagination, and sensory processing. So to elaborate there, you can see two apples, one with a smiley face, one with a sticker that appears to be a smiley face, and basically one of them is masking. And to mask is exhausting, and many autistic people do that. So for instance, giving a presentation like this, and afterwards, an autistic individual may be exhausted. And I'd be a person that would be exhausted because you put an awful lot of energy into the presentation, and you're aware of your surroundings as well in that way. So it could be different, it could be the heat of the room, it could be the light coming in as well. There's an awful lot of challenges there for somebody who is autistic. The communication aspect can be around, and I always described as invisible as well, between an autistic person and you could say a neurotypical individual. It's that space between them, and it's that space that communication can go wrong as well. And I've been in many situations myself, and you may think this, conversations you've had, somebody is trying to hint at something or say something, and if it's not said directly to me, this is just my communication style, I won't take the hint. You have to be very black and white with me in communication. Again, not everybody is the same, but that's my communication style. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be aggressive, you just have to be direct with me. Social interaction is another thing that some individuals who are autistic can find difficult. So it could be out shopping, it could be out for dinner in a restaurant, it could be visiting someone's house. It's actually the anxiety around that. It could be the noise, the interaction with people, having a conversation in a group. I don't know if you've ever been out at a party, you could be in a pub, you could be in around a group of friends, and there's several different conversations going on, and you actually fall out of the conversation that you're having because you can't keep track. You don't know which one you're in, the noise of the environment around you as well, and the lighting, and there can be all a distraction. So it can be very, very stressful, that sort of interaction. The social imagination is another thing that can be an issue. So literally seeing something from someone else's point of view. So again, or in someone else's shoes. So I know this was an issue with my sister, and she was told at school, try to see it from somebody else's point of view or wearing their shoes. And she said, her reply was, she said, well, why would I wear their shoes? We're not the same size. And I guess her absolute, she doesn't mind me saying this, but I get her point, because instead of saying, actually, this person has a viewpoint, can you imagine that viewpoint? So being direct with that communication. And then sensory processing, again, it could be overload. So I know a huge sensory issue, particularly for my sister, was she could not go into large stores shopping because of the noise and because of the lighting as well. And it was just too much. She would try and try again, and she'd get as far maybe as the baskets in, say, a large retail store, and she'd walk straight back out again. But since some of these stores have actually undergone sensory audits with AsIAm, she can actually enter them now at certain times when the lighting is turned down and the noise from the tills aren't ringing anymore. So it's made a huge difference for her, definitely. So I suppose, excuse me, to elaborate a little bit more on the communication and communication styles as well. So as I spoke previously, an individual may interpret language literally. And again, in Ireland, we have a great way of dancing around the point instead of being a little more direct as well. And by being a little more direct, especially in the work situation, then there's no miscommunication across the team as well, and everybody has received the same information. Individuals may appear to have a speech delay. Now, as adults, this can be due to anxiety. And when working with autistic adults, especially my own personal experience, I would say anxiety would be at the core of autism. I always say the two A's, A for autism, A for anxiety, and it's huge. And it can hold people back, anxiety can, from somebody reaching their full potential. But we can make small, reasonable accommodations, which I will talk about later on, which includes remote working, that can actually reduce somebody's anxiety and make a huge difference to their life as well. Individuals may script or rehearse conversation or questions. So, for example, today I've gone over this presentation, nearly a script in my head. I've rehearsed it. I've rehearsed even the questions that may come about as a result of it to reduce my anxiety. And many individuals do that. Some individuals may mimic or repeat what other people say or make unusual noises. So the mimicking as well, again, can be a rehearsal aspect. So something you learn along the way. It's a coping mechanism. It's again associated with anxiety as well. The unusual noises again can be associated with anxiety, but also self-regulation. So if you've had a tough day at work, sometimes someone will say, I just want to go home and sit in front of the TV and do nothing. So that's self-regulation. You're putting yourself in your docking station, as I say, to recover from the day. So it's the same for everybody across the board there. An individual may use alternative communication styles. So this can be, it could be head nodding. It could be in a team meeting, not wanting to speak out, again, anxiety. It could be through some individuals who would be nonverbal, can use sign language as well. So there's many different ways of communicating, as we all know. I think this most a common aspect I've been asked by employers about people not making eye contact, and I wonder why it is a big deal. And as we explain it to employers, they say, "Oh, it's actually not. We're just conditioned to think you have to make eye contact to be sincere." Again, it's associated with anxiety, confidence aspects, and people going for interviews is anxiety ridden across the field for everybody. But particularly if you are autistic, you may not have had many opportunities to go for interview. You may have had lots of experience going for jobs as well, but the anxiety doesn't reduce. So it can be associated with that aspect. And another part of communication is may not use or understand facial expression or body language. So unless you clearly communicate to the individual, okay, the interview's over, thank you, rather than sitting there and going in silence, you have to let an individual know, for example, an interview is over. Again, around facial expressions, some individuals can mistake, a smiley face for an aggressive face and vice versa, So reading facial expressions can be difficult as well. Okay, so I kept this, I put this into my presentation because around literal communication, what we just spoke about there. And this is actually from one of my colleagues. She shared it with me, and her daughter was asked to colour half of the carrots. So her daughter coloured literally half of the carrots. And I said, actually, she's dead right. And even from my own physics and maths background, I said, well, actually, she's dead right. That's literally what she was asked to do, was colour half of them. And it can show the miscommunication and how people must be clear in their communication on exactly what you want to everybody. So around behaviour, which is closely linked, and please, if you have any questions, Donal, interrupt me if there's anything there, if anybody wants to go back in anything which I've spoken about. Individuals may engage in stimming behaviours. And again, this can help regulate you if you're overstimulated in a situation. So it could be too much information, basically what I might be giving you right now. And stimming behaviours can come in the form of rocking back and forward in your seat. It can be twitching, it can be body movements as well. Another behaviour may be hypermobility and somebody walking on their toes. And this doesn't mean if you see somebody who does this that they are autistic. These are elements of behaviour an individual can have. An individual may have poor motor coordination as well. They may rely on routine or sameness. And I felt I wasn't sure about putting this in because I've done an awful lot of research on this, and actually about 80% of individuals, neurotypicals, autistic individuals across the board, prefer routine. Not many people like change. And routine gives us that, I suppose, that safety as well, and what you're doing, especially in the workplace as well. An individual may have specific or intense interests. So amazing abilities. I remember working with the Centre for Talented Youth, and I had a student who was 6 years old. He had so much knowledge about the Chinese army going back centuries. Absolutely amazing. He was like an encyclopedia, amazing individual. And you can have specific interests. My specific interest, believe it or not, is cars. So if you ever need advice on cars, I'm your woman for that. That's mine, especially German cars, my favorite. So you can ask me anything about that. An individual, again, they may appear to act unusually or repetitively to you, but remember, that's your perception of what unusual is. We all think differently, and it's not unusual to that individual either. So I'm going to show you a video. I'm not sure if the audio will be working, and we tested it earlier on, if you guys can hear it, but don't worry, I can describe it afterwards. I just want you to look at this. It's a train station in Japan, and how different it would be, I suppose, from our train stations or Dart. Okay, so I'll stop it there. Just even the noise is actually irritating me. So you can gather what's happening there. It's in Japan, that's their norm. If that happened here in Ireland, it'd be all over the news. It'd be a crisis in transport, but that is the norm for people living in that country. And that's a representative of how it feels to live in a world that's not built for you as an autistic individual.
Debbie, could you
Yes,
maybe explain what the audio was like? I don't think it came through on the video,
right.
so people can probably imagine a train station, but maybe just describe that for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Donal, for letting me know. So it was very, very loud. It was actually hurting my ears, and I was lowering down the volume, and eventually that's why I had to stop it. It was screeching noise. It was loud announcements. It was it was an attack on the senses, basically. I know if that happened, I'd probably be confused what train to take. It would just overtake my senses. Never mind trying to get on the train. And it's one of those, as I say, an attack on the senses, and then trying to actually get on that train. I would not. I'd walk away. I'd absolutely walk away. I'd rather try any other transport, or or walk to work if it took hours. It's I know I couldn't cope with that, and it, as I said, it just demonstrates you be in a world it's just not built for you. And this is a place where you live, and how you should feel that it is your home. You are part of the world, but you very much feel like you're not as well. And being pushed onto that train like that, um, again, that's what it can feel like for an individual. I know that's what it feels like for me if the dart gets too full. And even that's when I have a seat and the dart feels too full and people aren't pushing up against me. So that's an overload of the senses, if you can imagine. That's what it feels like. But it also shows that's the norm in Japan, but it certainly isn't here. And it's a cultural perspective there as well, and it's a different culture. It also captures, and I have it in a point there, the day-to-day challenges. Again, which people with autism experience. It's the overloaded communication, the noise, the announcements coming in, and the sensory, and then it also builds on that anxiety, which can ultimately lead to a meltdown for an individual and destroy their day, um, and it reminds us, and I put this in here, that small changes could make a huge difference. So if that was here, we say, right, we need an extra train, or we put extra carts on. That would make a huge difference to that huge issue of people trying to commute on that train as well. Now, before I move on, is there any questions in the chat, Donal?
Yeah, we had just one question which you might come back to.
Mm,
It was actually about the I'll just scroll up to it here. The social imagination point. So Titswan made a point about social imagination, and is this similar to the concept of empathy, or are they two different concepts in this context? Because social imagination is kind of your ability to maybe think of things that are quite abstract, and even the
mm,
example you used earlier was a metaphor of stepping into someone's shoes,
yeah.
which has two meanings. It has the
Mm,
metaphorical, conceptual meaning of empathy and imagining someone's perspective, but also
mm,
literally stepping physically into someone's shoes.
yeah.
So, often things get lost in translation,
Mm,
and we are constantly processing language at these
yeah.
at least two levels.
Yeah.
And actually, even when you made the point about the cultural differences, I mean, I'm sure anyone who's traveled, and I don't mean internationally, even
Mm,
from a rural place to a city, sometimes even like coming into Dublin, Busaras in the city centre, or into any city into the middle of Cork, it can be quite overwhelming because of
mhm.
the density of people, the sounds, and people running, and you have to get used to everything all, and especially, when you're younger as well. I remember for myself, it can be quite scary when you're in a place that you're not used to. So yeah, there's so much in that, and I think if
Yeah.
you add on to it other languages that you don't understand, or
Yeah.
even just sounds that you're not familiar with, and places you think you're lost, these are all really, really triggering for a lot of people. So it's
Yeah.
all very familiar, and really, I'd say a lot of people can relate to these points.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're here to talk about as well today. It's these small changes that can be made will benefit everybody, you know. Um, and I suppose around the empathy aspect, it's actually it's not related. It can be very easy to say it's related to empathy. Autistic individuals have more empathy in my experience than most people, because of not only the barriers faced by an autistic individual on a daily basis, and how many times they've met those barriers in their lifetime, coming up to them. The empathetic intelligence, from my experience, is much higher than most other people, and the sensory aspects around that. I find for somebody who is autistic, I often describe it as sunburn. And this is a very good friend of mine. He can only wear tracksuits um, and trainers. He cannot wear anything else. He'll break out in a rash. And I asked him how it feels, and he said, maybe, and we were having a good conversation, maybe like a rash. And I said, what about sunburn? He said, that's it. It's like somebody, when they come up, they touch you, very briefly walk past you, and it feels like they have really hit you or something. He said, that's what it feels like for me. That's his the sensory aspect there. And yeah, this individual, his empathetic intelligence is through the roof, because he constantly, he said, from when he was very young, he's constantly trying to see it from other people's points of view, constantly. He said, I do struggle, but like anyone else, not anybody will get 100% from someone else's view. You can, if you want to say, put yourself in someone else's shoes, but you'll only feel a certain amount because you're not actually in that situation yourself. So it's not an autistic problem, it's a communication issue from one side to the other. And if you're not clear to somebody, how will they ever be able to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, to have that empathy? So it's not actually an autistic problem, but it can be a challenge if not communicated clearly, certainly in my experience there. And I suppose if there's any other questions, stop me again, Donal. I'll just go on to the next slide because I don't want to keep people too long as well.
Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, so employment is my area. It's an area I'm very, very passionate about for the autistic community. And I initially did research just over 10 years ago. And I remember the results really upset me because I worried, I'm the eldest of 3, and I worried about my siblings not being able to work because there's barriers there to employment. And I found a staggering statistic. This is an international statistic and an Irish statistic. 85% of autistic adults are unemployed or underemployed. And I was absolutely, I think, really hurt by that as well. I'm thinking I just could not compute it. I could not understand it. My experience working with the autistic community is amazing, talented individuals who want to work and should not have these invisible barriers erected. They are not deliberately erected by companies. It's just companies' fear and lack of understanding, which again, I am working with companies on that as well to assist. Employment as well, I suppose, to research and a lot of reading I do, it's important for social inclusion for everybody to feel part of your world, to feel part of your community, not only to give back, but also to be able to pay for your life, to give you the opportunity so you can travel just like your friends if you want to get driving if you want like your friends, to give you the opportunities that everybody else has. And I mentioned many autistic people bring their own unique skill sets that are highly sought after in the workplace. And, this would be when I worked setting up specialist turn is specifically IT focused in Ireland, and we met many wonderful people. But the autistic community, like any other community, has a range of skills and has a range of interests as well. And that's what we're doing in AsIAm, is matching, working with companies and matching individuals with those companies. And some individuals want to work full-time, it's their first full-time job, or maybe it's their second or third full-time job, maybe part-time. It could be somebody who wants to work with an IT company, somebody that wants to work, in the hotel industry. It depends. Like any community, it's diverse and diverse skill sets as well. And some additional skills and abilities. I always say businesses may benefit from when hiring an autistic individual is unique problem solving, creative thinking, excellent attention to detail, the logical and strong technical abilities. And again, these are to name but a few with the autistic community. But just to name, I suppose, to highlight with people you employ, if it's a large or any company, 1 in 68 at least of your employees are autistic, whether they know or they've decided to disclose or not. And that is a fact as well. I suppose this is my huge question. It's like a headache to me, because I'm trying to drill down to the problem. Why is unemployment for autistic individuals? Why is it 85%? Or people who are underemployed? So I have worked with individuals, many different qualifications, and some with no qualifications, but amazing skills and abilities. And yet they can't get past sometimes the first hurdle of interview as well. And looking at the interview process, we've all been there. We've all been stressed by it. What if we could take the stress out of an interview? However, still conducting an interview that you still are able to retrieve the information from the individual in a setting that actually reduces anxiety for the individual, but also for the recruiter to be able to make the right decision to recruit that person or the right person for the position. Because as a recruiter, you'll only have, could be half an hour, 20 minutes or an hour to make that decision. And the best way to make that decision is actually through an autism-friendly interview, and it benefits everybody, not just autistic people. So that's what part of our trainings we provide to companies as well. Perceptions, and we spoke about that, of autistic people, and again, it's lack of understanding and fear on both sides, so in the autistic community and in businesses, and that's what can prevent the recruitment aspect, and it can put autistic people off applying for a job, especially when you read job descriptions. Parts of them are copy and pasted, and they can ask for, this individuals to work alone, and the hours are 9 to 5, and then at the end it can say, oh, must be a team person and flexible on hours. That's communication there. It can be confusing and can stop the best people applying for the job just because of very simple copy and paste errors. And with small accommodations like the job spec, maybe lighting in the workplace could make a huge difference as well to attracting autistic adults, but also, making a fair playing field for every employee as well, and existing autistic employees that you have. So reasonable accommodations could be adjusting the lighting, sensory pods or escape hatches as well, which we consult with businesses on and universities. Working in a quiet place, hybrid working, and of course remote working. This can benefit and reduce anxiety enormously for an autistic individual and the working community as well. So this is a common question I'm asked: what jobs can autistic people do? Like everyone else, as any job, as long as there are supports in place, which every human being needs in the workplace as well. And reasonable accommodations, and reasonable accommodations, 68% of them cost nothing to the workplace as well. Some roles, in my experience, especially around, I suppose, a specialist term, where I worked previously, obviously we're focused on IT, software development, network engineer, systems administrator. But, talking to the community now, again, it's a vast array of interests, which you would expect. Again, some IT roles or any roles like that with structure and routine are beneficial. They ease anxieties, especially when the first few weeks of a new work environment and adapting to that as well. Okay, so I'll be nearly finished and I won't hold you guys too much longer, hopefully finish in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Inclusive recruitment. So attracting autistic people to your organization. Job advertisement, no jargon, just get directly to, this will benefit everybody and will get the best applicants applying for these jobs. Say exactly what the job is, instead of adding in unnecessaries. Remove any skills that aren't specific to the role. Again, stop the copying and pasting, write exactly what you need. If there's an application form, put it reasonable accommodations during interview section on the form. This may be somebody that needs specific directions. They may lighting adjustment or particular seating aspect of things as well. The autism friendly interview, which I've mentioned before. Ask direct questions, no misleading questions. Give questions in advance of the interview. Now, I've spoken to many organizations and they looked at me, why would we do that? Why wouldn't you? It's not if somebody can cheat. You don't want somebody, you can have people that answer those questions directly, but they may be people that can think on their feet. They're not exactly people that can do the job. So to give people a fair playing field, give the questions in advance of the interview. It makes all the difference. And a recruiter that I worked with previously does that now and said it has made a huge difference for her recruitment process. Feedback, give clear timelines on what to expect, a decision wise. So you can say, I will email you by Friday at 4 o'clock, and Friday give the date, whether it's the 3rd of June or etc. Just be clear in your expectations. If the decision is made by then, communicate with the individual. It reduces anxiety as well. So we have there. Okay. I'm trying to get into this. Okay, so the last slide. Benefits of remote working. From conversations, research, and everything, higher retention rates for all staff. And we all know we've heard the arguments on TV about people wanting to remain working remotely and the benefits that has given the work-life balance. It benefits everybody. It reduces stress, the anxiety, and it stops the individual having to mask so much and take that energy away from them. The reasonable accommodations, again, if anybody needs to discuss this, I'm always available for any questions, includes remote and hybrid working. Amazing, and makes a huge difference, not only to the individual, but also to companies as well. Clear communication regarding expectations and remote working policy is what we always recommend as well. And I know Grow Remote provide courses on this as well. Employment supports, so training for both the employer and the autistic employee. And again, that's what AsIAm provide as well, which is essential for a successful partnership. This all leads to successful outcome for both the employer and the autistic employee, and it levels the playing field for all. And I think that's really, really important. To everybody deserves these opportunities as well. So I won't bore you anymore. I can go into questions and answers if you guys have time. I'll stop sharing there. Thanks for your patience. I try not to talk too much, and I'm very happy that I didn't cough. I have a drink ready.
Thank you so much. That was really, really brilliant. And I've just taken some notes there. I was taking some notes of those last two slides, especially. Just so much wisdom in there. And it really is a conversation, like you said, Debbie. It's something that people are talking with their employers every single day.
Yeah.
Communities are talking about this, and just getting a little bit of guidance from experts like yourself. You mentioned all the research you've done. I know Tituan, who's on, he's doing research. He shared some of the research that he found himself. But it's an area that's developing, and the more we know, and that we've learned through this presentation, we can bring it into our workplace. We can bring it into our teams. We can bring it into our communities, into the local cafe when we encounter someone with some of the behaviours you described. And it really is. It's about just sharing and talking about it. So I'm very conscious of the time as well, and we're really grateful for everyone for joining us. Just a final comment here. Tara says, amazing, Debbie, thank you so much. Tituan says,
Thanks,
to address
Sarah.
a concern I hear often but don't have a good answer for, what's the risk that 100% remote work would end up isolating an autistic person or depriving them of the social support? Maybe I'll just leave you with that, Debbie. How do you think, is 100% remote work a positive thing for people with autism? What do you think?
Okay, Tituan, that's a really good question. And again, I've been asked this before. It's dependent on the individual, like any other individual. And that's a conversation you can have with the person. So I was working with a company recently. They had offices in Ballsbridge, and very expensive area here in Dublin. They've decided to close them, and everybody is going remote completely because they don't want to pay the rent. And there was a new individual starting there. I never got to meet the team. So that's what was very important, was that they meet. It could be once every 2 weeks for half a day, and they have a room somewhere to rent, or they go for lunch together as well for that support. With the 100% remote working as well, it's important, I feel, to be able to manage the team with remote working by being prepared and doing a course with the likes of Grow Remote, which actually teach you those skills to keep everybody on board, especially the autistic individual who can clearly communicate. People can clearly communicate, and this 100% remote working for somebody who is autistic can provide different methods of communication. So if they do require additional supports outside, most companies do want some interaction with their employees in that respect.
That's great.
Okay.
And there's so much in that. The leading remote teams is the course you're talking about, and it's all
Yeah.
about how teams are managed.
Mm.
And interestingly, if an office, a HQ, or a building is no longer available,
Mm.
then that's actually where the Grow Remote chapters come in really, really handy, because people can meet offline. And we know that a lot of companies are doing that. They're actually giving stipends. We did an event with Zapier there. We had a Jobs Club, and they
Mm.
actually give their employees a stipend to meet up offline, and they say, here's the money, don't tell us what you spend it on, connect with your people. And it's really
Yeah.
important to get that. So even though they're kind of 100% remote, they are actually engaging offline, and it's part of how they're building their team. Also, it's important that you mentioned, not all people with autism are the same. Actually, the
Mm.
conversation with the individual is probably the starting point. And like you said at the very beginning of this, in our chat, Debbie, if you could remove the word assume or
Oh,
assumption from the dictionary, you would. And it's all about not making assumptions. Actually, just
mm.
got another question from Izzy. You might as well, while we're here.
Yeah.
She asks, is remote work widely available for a student who would have to balance a college and work schedule?
I suppose that's a question for two of us there. Uh, Definitely, in my experience, yes, and I think there's more opportunities now after the pandemic than there ever was, and it's come flooding back with a couple of individuals that I actually went to college with, and one of them started this remote working. Oh my goodness, about 16 years ago, and he was the guy that used to play I hate the word gambling, but anyway, he worked for one of these sites, and he was one of those amazing people you couldn't win against. And he basically started remote working a long time ago. And continued it with his studies as well. It's not the only obviously opportunities. There's much more, is he? But I think Donald's probably better placed to maybe give you an idea of what those jobs would look like as well, and the positions.
Yeah, Lizzie. I mean, there's basically a remote job for any type of work at all. A really good starting point, if you want to have a look, is to go to jobs.growremote.ie. That's our career center. You can upload your CV there. You can see what roles there are. You can filter. You can do your searches, but also check out the Grow Remote community. You can join and just ask that question, and you'll have lots of support from the community team. We have a resources website where there's just endless lists of links and things that you can check
Mm.
out, and it's just a really good place to do your digging. And Graham has just posted the career center there in the chat. No worries, thank you very much, Izzy. But yeah, it's again, it's up to the individual. If you think that remote work is suitable for you and it's what you want to go for, then absolutely come to Grow Remote. Just send us an email, go onto our Facebook, tweet us. We'll be able to pick up the conversation wherever you are. And likewise, if you have a question for Debbie, you can get her on LinkedIn. You can get her through the AsIAm website. Debbie, where's the best place for people to reach you?
Yeah, most definitely email. That's the best a place, and I'll always get back to you if it takes a little time. It's just sometimes the inbox is full, but I'll always get back to you. And if you want to have an individual conversation over Teams, or you prefer not to do that, or just over the phone, we can arrange that as well. There's no problem. It's always in confidence as well. So I always say to anybody, whether you're from a company, whether you're an autistic individual, in education, etc., there's no such thing, one, as silly questions, and you don't have to be careful with me using different language around that, because people are afraid to use, or is this okay to say, can I say that? You can ask me, and as a representative working with the autistic community with ear to the ground, I can advise you on that language. So you're in a very safe space, because I just want to work with as many people as possible to spread the information, to communicate with everybody, and hopefully, to be able to work more efficiently with businesses and the autistic community, providing that matching service as well, because that 85%, I still I still struggle. That's my sunburn. I actually, even through all the research, I'm an avid reader. I keep reading because I'm still trying to find some other answer, and I still find it very frustrating. And it's a human rights issue. I have written a little bit on that with United Nations Convention for Human Rights as well, and it is a human rights issue, is critical area that needs to change, and I'd love to be able to change that percentage
Yeah,
by a
brilliant.
lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we any support you need from Grow Remote, absolutely. I'm sure this won't be the last time we're chatting.
I
But
think so.
just for anybody who doesn't have access to the chat, could you let people know what your email is, how they can reach you in case they're watching back on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll actually put it in the conversation as well.
Sure.
It's Debbie, Debbie, at asiam.ie.
Perfect. So that's Debbie at asiam.ie. Thank you so much,
That's
Debbie.
it.
And thank you all for joining. Thank you for watching back on YouTube. And it's been a privilege to speak with Debbie, to have this conversation. And again, we're both here. Everyone from Grow Remote, everyone from AsIAm is here for you to ask questions. So thank you so much. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for joining. Great to have you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you again, Izzy. Thanks to each one. And yeah, we'll leave it there, and people can finish off their lunch hour. And yeah, we'll talk to you all very soon. If you want to reach out directly to the community team here
Thank
at
you.
Grow Remote, it's community@growremote.ie. Thanks again, Graham. All right. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. See you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Donal.